The Foreign Secretary is, of course, absolutely right to insist that the future of Greenland is a question only for the people of Greenland. Does she acknowledge, though, that this crisis is the consequence of our weakness, of decades of failure on the part of Europe and the UK to invest in defence, and indeed a historic failure of statecraft on the part of the United Kingdom that saw one naval officer attend Greenland and have the consequence of 10% tariffs imposed on us? So she mentions this conversation she had in Scandinavia last week. Did she offer to do more than simply cooperate with our partners and neighbours, but to actually lead in the defence of Greenland by committing a proper joint expeditionary force led by the UK with the proper commitments to ensure the safety of Greenland?
Secretary.
Can I just say to the honourable member that the biggest threat to Arctic security comes from Russia. Yeah. And he would have a lot more credibility in talking about any of these Arctic security issues if he and his new party would actually look inwards at themselves and do the long-needed investigation into Russian influence in their party.
Kerry McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's strong response and the assurances we've heard from the Foreign Secretary today. She quite rightly made clear that Donald Trump's claims to need to possess Greenland for security reasons are complete and utter nonsense. The US already has access, and she talked about a multilateral approach to Arctic security. There is also the critical minerals element, which I suspect is also a great deal to do with his interest in the country. Can she say what we're doing to have a similar multilateral approach to critical minerals as we seek to divest from Chinese reliance?
And Foreign Secretary.
My honourable friend is right to raise there's the broader issue around critical minerals. You know that many of the issues around Greenland are long-term issues as opposed to immediate critical mineral issues. But there is a wider thing about ensuring that we have security around our critical mineral supply chains and needing to work with other countries to prevent any country having a chokehold around the supply of critical minerals. That is crucial in some of our issues around new green technologies, but it's also crucial more widely on our economic prosperity and economic security for the future.
Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. All relationships, especially special relationships, need a foundation, must have a foundation of respect and mutual consent. Yeah. What is the status within NATO of economic measures being used to force the annexation of a sovereign territory within NATO?
Well, NATO allies need to respect each other, and that is a core part of the NATO alliance. It is what makes the alliance effective, and to not do so simply aids our adversaries.
Joanna Baxter.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome both the Foreign Secretary's statement and the Prime Minister's remarks earlier this morning. It may be surprising that neither Greenland nor the Arctic were featured as a strategic priority in the United States' own national security strategy, which was published in November, but transatlantic trade did. So will the Secretary of State make clear to the United States administration that both its goals of prosperity and long-term security of the Arctic can only be achieved through close cooperation with allies rather than dangerous rhetoric and actions that risk weakening the collective strength on which we all rely?
I agree with my honourable friend because our economic prosperity for the UK, for Western Europe, for right across Europe, but also for North America, including the US, Canada as our other NATO allies, our prosperity is strengthened by trade rather than tariffs. Our security is strengthened by the cooperation through NATO and by respect for each other's sovereignty and collective security.
Gavin Robinson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Foreign Secretary is right to say that NATO allies should not threaten one another. She is also right to highlight the threat and potential harm caused by trade wars and tariffs imposed. But does she understand the bemusement on the Northern Ireland benches that while she talks strongly about sovereignty, it was this House that diminished the sovereignty of Northern Ireland and placed us into the European Union Customs Code? And I hope she recognises that there is a double-edged sword on tariffs for Northern Ireland. But Speaker Mike Johnson spoke at the weekend, and he's addressing Parliament tomorrow. And he said very clearly that whilst he has heard what President Trump has said, he does not know what his aspirations are in relation to Greenland. Does she?
Secretary.
Well, what I hope that really everyone across, not just the US administration, across the US would agree, is that we should have shared aspirations for our shared security in the Arctic and recognise that that includes respect for sovereignty, respect for that collective partnership, and also recognising that the nature of the Arctic security threat and how much of it is maritime as well depends on countries working together, because it depends on being able to address issues around the eastern end of the Arctic, around northern Norway, and around the western end of the Arctic and the Greenland-Iceland gap. It's only through having that cooperation that you can keep the Atlantic safe, you can keep all of our countries safe.
Dr. Peter Prinsley.
As possibly the only MP with American grandchildren, would the Secretary of State agree with me that whatever disagreements may arise between the government and the government of the United States about Greenland, the bonds of friendship and kinship between the peoples of this island and the peoples of the United States are historic, vital and enduring?
Foreign Secretary.
My honourable friend is exactly right to highlight the strength of our bonds, the people-to-people bonds, but also the deep historic bonds and the continuing cooperation bonds. Even today, the US and UK have been discussing issues around terrorism threats in northern Syria and needing to tackle Daesh and continued threats there. So we have so many different areas of shared interests and also that shared history, and that is why it is so important that we pursue this disagreement in a robust and constructive way now.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In pushing back against the tariffs, can the Foreign Secretary and others make clear to the US that it's not just the potential imposition of these tariffs, but it is the bandying about of the threat of the tariffs which is so disruptive and difficult for major British businesses, such as the Scotch whisky industry, that export to the US. And therefore, if they're just game playing or tactics, they are causing real damage right now.
I agree with the honourable member about the impact that threats can have, the instability that it can cause, but also the importance of us having some stability, some respect in relationships is actually a crucial underpinning of the economy.
Clive Efford.
Speaker, if this were a debate truly about the security of the Arctic, we would be talking about more